Hi AP Psychology students, and welcome to our next video. Today we are going to be talking about some of the challenges that we face with our memory, specifically forgetting and failure. So, two of the essential questions we're going to be looking at today are: one, why do we forget information? And two, what causes our memories to become distorted or inaccurate? So we're going to start with forgetting, and when we talk about forgetting, research has provided some information on why we forget information. So of course we have biological causes of memory loss, right? And we also have issues that happen at either the encoding, the storage, or the retrieval stage. So if you look at this graphic over on the right hand side, you'll see that the sensory memory, we take in a lot of information. The working memory, less information, right, gets noticed and encoded, then even less make it to long-term storage, and then even fewer things sometimes can be retrieved out of long-term memory, right? So we start off with a lot of information, and there's not so much at the end. So what are these biological causes? So memory loss can be the result of some sort of physical damage to your memory system. So remember we talked about the hippocampus, the cerebellum, the frontal lobes, the basal ganglia. So damage to any of those places in your brain could cause memory loss. This could be from a stroke, from cancer, like having a tumor removed, or from having a traumatic brain injury, or some sort of illness. Actually, most illnesses cannot get into the brain because of the blood-brain barrier, but there are some illnesses that can get into and infect your brain. It can cause swelling and other things, and then that can end up damaging your brain long term. So depending on the type of damage, the amount of damage, your memory can be impacted in lots of different places and in lots of different ways. So two of the most common that we see with accidents are retrograde amnesia and anterograde amnesia. And I think this graphic does a really great job of showing the difference between the two. So if you take a look, you see that the arrows are pointing to when there's the onset of amnesia right here, right? And those of us that have, if you have a retrograde amnesia, your memory loss is before the amnesia started. So you can't remember things in the past. If you have anterograde amnesia, you can't remember things in the future, right? So retrograde, past, anterograde, future. Okay, but not all forgetting happens because of physical damage in the brain. Some forgetting happens because there's issues with encoding, storage, and retrieval. So the first one we have is issues with encoding. So this is the type of forgetting, and I have that in quotation marks because you didn't really actually ever store it. So the word forgetting seems weird, but it's forgetting that stems from a lack of attention. So the information never made it into our long-term storage in the first place because we did not pay attention to it. It got lost right here, right, on its way from working in short-term memory to long-term storage. We weren't paying attention, we didn't use a strategy, and it just never made it in. This is a very famous illustration, these pennies, of encoding failure, because you've seen a million pennies in your lifetime, but do you know which one is the right penny, right, looking at all of these? Right? You may not ever have taken the chance to look at the penny, so you didn't really forget what the penny looks like, you just never remembered it in the first place. Okay. The next type of forgetting is storage decay. So this is natural decay of memories that happens over time. And we talked about this a little bit in class already with the forgetting curve. That like actually your memory, when it comes to taking in information and then keeping it, forgets very rapidly. Like within the first hour, you forget almost half of everything that you've learned. And what we know is that that levels off over time. One thing that can help with storage decay, which is natural, is that repetition. So if you look over here, every time you review the material, which is shown by these arrows, the decay takes longer and it levels off sooner, right? So that's how you can help fight storage decay. Kind of like how with encoding failure, you can help fight it by paying more attention. Our last kind of stage of forgetting can happen at retrieval, right? So we have encoding, storage, retrieval. So retrieval failure is when we got information into storage. So we encoded it and we stored it. But for some reason, we can't access it. It's in there, but we can't get to it, right? We don't want to get to it. We can't find the right cue. We're messing up cues in our brain. Sometimes this can be kind of felt by people, what they call the tip of the tongue phenomenon. So that's a real thing, right? Where you feel like you know the answer, it's at the tip of your tongue, but you can't get at it. You can't say the right thing, you don't know the right thing, and then maybe you're doing something else 10, 15, 20 minutes later, and a retrieval cue for some reason activates, and then you remember it. Another type of retrieval failure is called interference. And this is when we have old memories or new memories blocking each other in order to prevent the retrieval of the information. So there's two different ways this can work. The first is with proactive interference. And this is when old information, right, information you've learned in the past, prevents you from learning new information. And retroactive interference is when new information blocks or prevents you from learning old information. So here's an example of this, right? Proactive interference is you have a locker combination in high school, and then you go to a gym locker after high school or in college, and you can't remember the new locker combo because you keep recalling the old one. Retroactive is you get a new email, your sibling gets a new email, and then you can't remember their old email, right? So you only remember the new one. Okay. Now, this can be very confusing for students. New, old, new. They get it kind of all mixed around. So the way that you're going to remember this is with a word that I don't think you're ever going to forget. So the word that you're going to use, the acronym to help you remember this, is the word porn. Yes, that's right. Your teacher's telling you to remember the word porn and to write it in your notes. So proactive old, retroactive new. P-O-R-N, right? That's what you're going to use to help you remember the difference between proactive and retroactive memory. Now, not all memory comes from forgetting, but some issues come from forgetting. Some memory issues come from errors in your memory, right? So it's important to remember that your memory is not like a photograph or a computer. It doesn't just stay like it is, like a photograph. It's not just, a moment in time. And like a computer, it goes in, but what comes out isn't always what went in. It can fail us, and it's prone to errors. And what we've learned through studying memory is that actually our memories are created through construction. So this is the idea that our memories are what really happened to us, plus our imagination, our expectations, our assumptions, and every single time we recall a memory, every single time we think about it or say it to someone or tell a story or relate it to something, we actually alter or slightly distort the memories, and then they're stored again. So over time, your memory is a combination of what really happened and what you expected or thought to happen, maybe what somebody said, maybe what somebody added in, maybe a picture you saw, right? Over time, our memories kind of shift, and not that they're wrong, but they're just blurry, kind of on the edges, as opposed to being super crisp and sharp. One of the most common and most studied memory errors is this misinformation effect. So this is the idea that our memories can be corrupted by misleading information. So a very famous psychologist, Elizabeth Loftus, she studied this memory kind of phenomenon, and she studied it by asking people about a car accident. So she asked participants in her study, how fast were the cars going when they smashed or when they hit each other? The smashed group recalled a faster speed and more broken glass. And actually, there was no broken glass at the scene of the original accident they looked at, but they remembered glass when they were asked the word smashed instead of hit. So the word smashed, right, just that one change led to a change in the way that their memory had held onto the information, right? So the misinformation effect, or the way that you ask information, can change the memory. Another memory error that we've studied is this idea of source amnesia. So source amnesia is when you can't remember where or when the information was learned, right? And this is very commonly found in if you had a dream and then maybe a day or two later something happens and you're like, wait, did I dream about that? Did that happen for real? You could have a hard time remembering if it was reality or dream. That's what this visual here is, if you're familiar with this Friends episode where Phoebe is mad at Ross and she's mad at him the whole episode and she won't speak to him, and then when he's finally like, why won't you speak to me, she's like, don't you remember, like, we were playing chess and you called me boring, and then you, it says right here, and then you took off your energy mask and you were Cameron Diaz, and at the end she said, there's a chance that was a dream. So she was mad at Ross the whole episode for something that happened in a dream. Another example of this could be like maybe forgetting where you learned something. So did your friend tell it to you, or did you see it on TV, or did you read it, right? That it's the source of the memory that is not quite accurate. All right, AP Psychos, thanks for joining us today to learn about all the challenges that your memory faced. Remember to stop before you end this video and make sure you can answer those essential questions. That's all for now, AP Psychos. And remember, psychology is flippin' awesome.